Okay, let me give it a juicy, I'm going to give it a juicy title. Hold on one sec. And we're going to be live in my main Facebook group.
Great. Will there be people live watching, or are we just recording?
Yes.
Okay.
There will be people live watching, and I will entertain questions. I've got that screen open too.
Great.
Sharing group. And then I love the idea of putting this in my school. I think we should do something else for school, though. I think we should do more branded content from you guys in my school. I know we have something in there, but we'll revisit that later.
Okay.
Got it. Are you ready? Here we go. So I'm excited about today for a lot of reasons. And I would say the number one reason is because Holly and Miles are people who I have been on the wellness practice journey with for a long time. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Nice to have you in this world, on this plane. And years ago, I got involved with cash practice because I simply needed a solution for my front desk. And the way that cash practice has evolved over the years is fascinating to me. I think that what Miles and his team, including Holly, do is they give wellness practitioners options to streamline and systematize. And here's the thing, you guys, automate when automation is appropriate. So what we see in our community is wellness practitioners trying to automate things that just shouldn't be automated, but there are pieces where it's appropriate, where streamlining and automating is appropriate. And I think that I really, truly think that that's where cash practice's lane of genius is. So what we're going to be talking about today is how significant objective findings are and how to find ease and comfort with them as a wellness practitioner. So you guys take it away. I'm just going to be the voice of reason. I'm going to be asking questions. I'm watching the Facebook group live. So if you guys have questions, I'll throw them in too.
And Jody, when you say you're the voice of reason, what does that make us then?
I don't really know. I don't know where that came from. I just kind of pulled it out.
I love that.
The voice of the community.
The voice of the Well, thanks for having us. And Jody, of course, we've known you forever, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you and with the people that you're helping. And we're thrilled to share with everybody. I think some insights. And I know before we got on live here, we were talking a little bit about the background, and that one of the things you share is that doctors that you work with have been spending thousands of dollars on coaching. They've been banging their head against the wall trying to grow their practices. And you know, there's some challenges. And I think what we're about to share with you today should hopefully open some eyes and hopefully raise the ceiling so that you're getting to higher heights without banging your head on the ceiling. That's the intention here, is ultimately to help you grow your practices and have success. So with that being said, I do have some slides prepared to help me stay on track and help me get our message across. So I'm going to share my screen. Holly, did you want to say anything before we got started? By the way, Holly Jensen's our Chief Operations Officer here at our company, Cash Practice. We've been working together now 21 years or so now, and side by side helping the profession. Anything you want to add before we get started?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this together for 20 years. I started out as Dr. Bodson's chiropractic assistant in 2002. So over these years of working together, not only have we helped our own patients thrive in practice, we've been able to help thousands of doctors and their assistants create a thriving practice as well. So I'll let you just dive right into the material. Right. I'm really excited for the audience to see what we have prepared today.
All right, well, give me a second here. Let me switch over to sharing my screen. Let's see here, share screen. There it is, share. And make sure I share the correct screen 2.
Little do you guys know that we tried really hard to use this very fancy software to go live at all places, and I totally put my foot in my mouth. So here we are on Zoom, but it's sufficient. It will do.
Excellent. So simplifying objective findings to maximize growth and retention. And this is the key. We have found that when you're running a wellness type practice, whether you're doing chiropractic, functional medicine, whatever it is you're practicing, we know that your growth and your retention are key to that success in your practice. So let's get into the material today. Real quick disclaimer, I'll leave this on the screen. You can go back to the recording later and read this. Basically, it's our general disclaimers when it comes to our presentations we give, and you can come back, take a look at that later on. A little background here, me, and there's little Holly right there in the middle, back in probably around the early 2000s or so, in our practice called the Chiropractic Wellness Center. And our practice was called the Chiropractic Wellness Center back before wellness was a thing. Let me share with you that when I launched my practice in 1994, early 90s, we went and registered our business name like all of us do as practitioners, right? If we're in private practice, we go register our name. And at the time, the word wellness existed in actually 0 companies in all of San Diego, which is where I practiced at the time. So we were way ahead of the curve from the standpoint of wanting to do wellness. But at the same time, at that point in time, there was this new thing that maybe you're familiar with called managed care. There's this whole new thing called HMOs. And at the time, we had to figure out how do we run a wellness practice where patients are coming in with insurance that I'm not part of, and they got to pay for it out of their pocket. And long story short, we struggled a lot and we figured a lot of things out. And that's what I'm going to share with you today are some of the things we figured out. And objective findings being presented in a proper way is a key component to some of the things we figured out on how do you get people to follow through with care. That's ultimately what we're talking about here. Now, we've gotten pretty well known. Holly and I travel around the country. In fact, this last weekend, we were just in, where were we? We were in Mississippi this last weekend. And the weekend before, we were in Alabama. And I know we'll be in Missouri next month or in January. We travel all over the place speaking and teaching now. And it's a real thrill. So it's really nice to be sitting in my home office right now speaking. We didn't have to get on an airplane or go anywhere. And coming to you live. It's gotten a lot of attention, the things we teach. Holly and I have both been featured on the cover of some of the chiropractic trade magazines with our topic and our material because it's gained so much recognition of what we're teaching. So we're thrilled to be with you guys today and to share this with you guys. So let's dive right in. And I'm going to ask you to follow along, maybe grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and paper and write some things down because we want to teach you some things. And I want to spend these first maybe this first 10, 15 minutes kind of before we dive right into the topic, I want to kind of set the tone as to what drives all this stuff. And I always like to start with the end in mind. And where did I learn that? Well, I learned it from several places, but one place that it really kind of nailed it for me was when I read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey talks about in that book, starting with the end in mind. And we'll start with, I believe the end in mind for everybody listening right now is to have success, And I would ask you, what do you define as success? And you can write it yourself. Like, is it more money? Is it more free time? Is it more new patients? Is it people following through? Is it more vacation time? Is it freedom to go on, to take time off? Is it the ability? What is it to you? What defines success? And it's a good mental exercise to write this down for yourself because it's different for everybody. When I'm with a live audience and interacting with the group, we hear all kinds of things. I know this last weekend in Mississippi, we had a lot of different answers given to us as to what people define as success. But I will tell you, the one thing that's common, the common denominator among all of the doctors' definitions of success was simply that they had more money in their practice. That when they defined it, that money in the bank was a metric that could be commonly used among all the doctors that defined success for them. Meaning if they wanted more free time and more new patients, all these things, that would be reflected in their bank account. So I know success is not just about money, 100%. It's not just about money. But I think we could agree that money is a good indicator of whether you're having success in these other areas of your life and your practice. So for the sake of today's presentation, I'm going to be using money as a metric. Please don't misinterpret that this is all about making money because I know we're doctors and we're here to help people, but it's just a common denominator we could use to make some points to get across. That's simply what I'm doing here. And I will say that the one thing that's challenging doctors and stopping them from having success, what do you think it is? And for the sake of time, I'm going to answer the question rather than, spending a lot of time waiting for answers. I'll tell you, the number one challenge we see stopping success is poor conversions and poor retention. The ability to enroll your patients in care successfully, as well as the ability to keep them. And I would say that when we interview doctors and we hear about them, many of you listening right now have gotten some great help in converting your patients. You've listened to some great coaches, you've had great lessons, you do a good day 1, day 2, that whole process, and you're good at converting, but in spite of that, you're not good at retaining them. And that's just the God honest truth. that many doctors are really good at enrolling people, but really they fall off a cliff when it comes to retention. And then there are many doctors I speak to who are not good at conversions, and we know they're not good at retention. Like, you can't be good at retention without good at conversions. So it always starts there. And many of you listening right now are probably pretty good at converting your patients, but where you're needing help is in retention. And we're going to drive that point home today. So we say that your success is dependent upon how good are you at converting and retaining. Converting and retaining. That is the driving force of the success in your practice. And again, we're using money as our metric. There's many things that go into success. For example, in my own practice, I was so good at retention that I was able to say to Holly at one point, I don't want to see any new patients for the next few months. Why was I able to say no more new patients? And I was super busy at that time with my life. That's why I needed a break. The reason we could say no new patients for the next few months is because our retention was so good, that our retention was so high that in most practices that don't have good retention, if you didn't see new patients for a few months, your revenues would fall through the floor. Like, you would be almost like you'd be super stressed, right? That you're always wondering where your new patients are. But when your retention is high, it gives you that freedom, that flexibility to kind of take your foot off the gas every so often if you want to do so. So why is conversion and retention the key to success? Because ultimately it's what drives the revenue in the practice. New people showing up and then keeping them. And what do you think an outstanding retention and conversion, or conversion retention, looks like? So for you to write down, like, I would suggest, like, for you to set a goal, you got to kind of have to picture it. What does it look like to you if you had good conversion? Like, would you know it if you had it? Would you know if you're having good retention? And would you know if you had good conversions if you had it going on? And I'll say that, you know, what is that an 80% conversion rate? Is that a 90%? Is it a 50%? Like, what percentage of patients are enrolling would you consider outstanding? And how long are they staying with you? How would you define that as outstanding? And that's not for me to define for you. That's for you to define for yourself, what you would consider to be a benchmark as to, at a minimum, at a bare minimum, this is the conversions I should be having. And at a bare minimum, this is the retention I should be having. And what are three things I would say that are poor retention and conversions costing you? Well, I think it's pretty obvious what it's costing most doctors. It's going to be costing them stress of always on the market. It's going to be costing them revenue, free time. I mean, I can go on and on and on. It's basically all the things that success, all the things you're saying that would give you success. Well, it's the opposite of that. Like, if you're not having good conversions, retention, that's what it's leading to. I know that when I consult with doctors, or I'm meeting them out at these conventions we're out speaking at, and they open up and they share, many of them are very stressed. Many of the doctors are stressed because they always need to be replacing. They're always hitting their head on the ceiling. And I don't need to beat this one up. I think it's pretty self-evident that when you don't have people converting to care and enrolling, and I'm guessing that's why you're here today. That's why you're listening. That's why you're attending this right now. And this is why you're working with Jody. This is why you're doing these things, because you want to have greater success. That's why Jody brings a person like us in here. And when you don't have the retention, this is just a graphic representing that ultimately your patients are what generate revenue in your practice. And that the lack of people, or people not following through or dropping out, that's losses of revenue. That, every time a person doesn't enroll, every time a patient who does start care and drops out early, that's lost income to your practice. And again, I don't mean to equate people with money, but at the end of the day, that's the business side of things. That's the metric we're using, is the dollars that they represent in you providing your healthcare. So it's not just about the money. And I know I keep beating this one. It's not just about the money. Obviously, we're doctors. We're here to take care of people. And that's what drove us to become doctors, is, we're caring individuals. We want to take care of them. So I'll ask you this question. What are three things poor conversions and retention are costing your patients? What's it costing your patients when you don't have good conversions, and especially don't have good retention? I'll use an analogy here. For those of you who are chiropractors, and if you're not a chiropractor, you're doing something else, use an analogy here. And that is, I want to pretend right now you have a great technique. And if I was teaching you right now technique on how to help patients as a chiropractor adjusting, and I was going to teach you to have lightning bolts fly out of your fingertips, like that's how good your adjusting was going to be. And by doing the technique I'm going to teach you, you will always get better clinical results. Raise your hand, not I don't see you, but literally raise your hand if you want to know those techniques to get better results. And every one of you are raising your hand right now. You're like, yes, I want to do better for my patients. And if there was something I could clinically teach you to get better clinical results, I'm going to guess you're going to pay attention. And many of you would try that in order to get better clinical results. Now, if you did have lightning bolts flying out of your fingers, would it matter if patients weren't showing up? Would it matter if they dropped out early? It wouldn't matter how good your technique was if people weren't following through. And I know you all know this, that you know that what you provide helps people. And it's frustrating when patients fall out of care early or they don't start care. And I'm here to tell you that you need to master this. And I know that's why you're here right now, but I'm trying to drive the point home that you need to put the energy and effort in to learn what it takes to have more people convert to care, and more importantly, have them stick to care. And now I know you know that. I know that's why you're here, but I'm driving the point home because so many people don't realize that, and they'll spend 3-4 years in school learning what to do clinically on people, but they won't take the time, energy, and effort to learn what it takes to get people to follow through with care. And this was a lesson for me because I, like many of you, went into practice thinking that if patients understood what I knew in my mind, they would follow me to the ends of the earth. They would literally, if I taught them what chiropractic was about, they would listen to me and they would follow me forever. And what I sadly learned was that was a big lie. It was a big fat lie. And here's why my point. Every one of you right now have had a patient come to you who knows they should quit smoking and they don't. They know they should eat better and they don't. They know they should exercise more and they don't. They have all the knowledge in the world to make the right decisions and they don't change their behavior. And what we learned was there's other things that drive patients' behavior to follow through with you. And giving them feedback with objective findings, which is the focus of today, is one of the 4 major things that's required in order for patients to follow through. So what I'm sharing with you right now is there are things that are outside of what you've generally been taught that drive your patients to start and enroll in care. Poor conversions of premature dropout are the leading causes of patients not getting the full benefits of your care. That's really what it comes down to. We know you know what you're doing as a clinician, but if you're not getting great results, it's not because you don't know what you're doing. It's because it's the patient not following through. Now, there are things you could do to help influence that patient to follow through, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I mean, imagine a patient who comes to you and initially, when you do their evaluation, they're an F. And they get a little bit of improvement and they get to a D+, and then they drop out of care. How frustrating that is, right? How frustrating that is for them to get some improvement and then disappear, versus that patient who follows through and they go from an F to a D, to a C, to a B, to an A, and they continue to improve over time. We know that patient is going to have, clearly they're getting better clinical outcomes. Clearly they're more likely to refer people. Clearly they're more likely to sing your praises and write great reviews and all those things when that person is getting great results. And that's ultimately why it's so important that you're able to communicate to people their objective findings, which is the focus of today's presentation. What I'm teeing up right now is I'm trying to drive home the point that it's not just about giving people objective findings and reporting back to them. It's about helping them follow through with care. That's really the key here. So what does poor retention and premature dropout really cost your patients? It costs them their health, basically, the health and the happiness in their life and the happiness in their community and their ability to interact with their kids without having stress in their life and difficulties and all of those things. Really life-changing is what it is. My question is, where do you think you're dropping the ball? Where do you think you're lacking in helping people follow through with care?
Can I jump in there, Miles?
Yes, please do.
What I see, can you just stop sharing for a minute?
Sure.
So what I gave Dr. Miles fair warning that I was going to think for you guys if you're watching this live. And what I hear when I'm working with staffless practice clients is they're afraid to talk about forever with practice members because they're coming in with a hot topic. And once the hot topic has cooled off, they believe they're on their merry way. And the window of opportunity for educating is so small. They're afraid that I hear this all the time. They're afraid that if they try to educate in the wrong window, they're going to lose the patient from the beginning. So is there a fine line in your experience between yesterday I saw a practice member and she comes in twice a year because she really thinks that that's the cadence for chiropractic. I've said to her over and over again, subluxation, detriments of health, all of the things I've taught her and taught her and taught her. She still comes in twice a year because that's the cadence that she thinks chiropractic takes for her life. So when do you push back? When do you say, Mrs. Jones, you really need to take a listen to how do you know when that sweet spot is?
That's a great question. And, you said something about the cadence of when to educate and stuff. One of the analogies I'll use is, Jody, let's pretend for a moment, you and I, we didn't know each other. And you and I just met at a cocktail party. And in that cocktail party, we're having some drinks and we're having a conversation. And in that conversation, I'm asking about your life and your family and all these things. And I'm doing a good job getting to know you. And a good 15 minutes goes by. And about 15 minutes into the conversation, I change gears and I go from asking about you and your life and all these things. And what I change is I now start sharing with you how maybe your life might be a little bit better, or I could help you in your life if you followed my own political beliefs.
Right.
Let me ask you this. We got connected prior to me changing gears. You felt connected to me because it was all about you and I was asking about you, and I did a good job of building rapport with you. But if I change gears now and start talking about my viewpoints, and I'm using politics as this example, but healthcare is kind of like that. It's your viewpoint. And I do that too soon, where did that connection go?
It drops.
It dropped. It's gone. Now,
Right.
Other side of the coin. You and I have that same conversation and we connect, and that's where it ends. And I say, you know what? Let's get some coffee next week. And, we're striking up and we get some coffee next week. And then we get to lunch, and 3 or 4 weeks go by and we're getting to know each other. And then maybe 5 weeks into it, I say to you, maybe in that conversation, I start sharing some of my thoughts about my political views, but I'm not telling it's what you need to do, but I'm just sharing it with you. We could probably have a good conversation and probably not break connection. Meaning the timing of that conversation is important. Meaning, and the same thing with healthcare, that when you're timing your education, it's critical you're not doing it too soon and you're not doing it too abruptly.
It's everything. And I think it's where we drop the ball most. Someone comes in and they threw their back out, and that's why they think they're in my office. That's not the time for me to ram information down their throat. Correct. They want to get on my table and they want to feel better in their body. They want their experience to be different. So when is the window? How do you know that you're at the window?
How do you know you're at the window? I think that's I would say a loaded question. It's it changes from person to person. I would say this: when I'm teaching this material, in a long format, a weekend type thing, one of the subjects we'll get into is what drives our patients' behavior is they know in their gut they're in the right place. It's an emotion. It's not an intellectual thought. They feel it like this is right for me. And write this down, everybody. There's 3 ways we drive that emotion. There's 3 emotions that we have to create for patients to feel they're in the right place. 1, they need to feel connection to you. Number 2 is they need to trust you. And number 3, they must feel an emotion of hope. And it's those 3 emotions that will drive them to feel this feeling, this is right for me. So when you ask when is the right time to do that, I'm not going to say there's a right time. I'm going to simply say that I'm always focused on making sure my patients feel connected to me, that they feel they could trust me, and that there's a sense of hope. And as long as that's what's going on, so I'm not sure I'm answering your exact question.
No, that's so perfect. And I'm typing everything that you're saying. So if you guys are driving or whatever, you got notes right here in the Facebook.
Connection, trust, and hope. And we could spend an hour just on that topic, which is beyond the time we have right now. Maybe we'll come back at another time if you want me to do that. But those emotions are what drive people to feel innately in their gut, this is right for me. And that feeling of this is right for me is ultimately what will drive your patient to hire you or fire you. Right. That's what ultimately will drive their behavior, is that feeling inside, versus you lecturing them on the importance of what you do, versus you teaching them about what you do. Meaning, this was a hard lesson for me personally to learn, because I come from an engineering background, very analytical in a way. So it's very, it's very educational as the way my brain works. And that's how a lot of doctors are. We're into our thoughts and the education. That's why we became doctors, right? So to break away from that and learn that what drives your patients to enroll and stay, it's not an intellectual thought about how great what you do is doing, what benefit it has. It's that they feel a sense they connect to you, they trust you, and there's a feeling of hope for the future with them.
I love it.
So, all right, let me go back to my slides.
I wanted
Go
to just
ahead,
add,
Holly.
I want
Well,
to share a story about one of our patients.
Sure, go ahead.
So Dr. Bodson, he had set up a video camera in our office and had it set up with the hopes of interviewing patients to ask them, like, why are you still coming in? Like, why are you here? Like, you could go anywhere else. Why us? And this one particular patient, I remember we asked her, do you ever feel like we're trying to convince you to be here, by educating you or indoctrinating you? And we were surprised with her answer. She said, well, actually, yeah, but you don't push it down my throat. The information and the education is available when I ask for it.
Right.
Because we were always really good at what we call drip education, slowly dripping this information, this education to our patients along the way once they've already hired us, right? And so the information was always available, but I think that it's just every patient had a different answer. So it just depends on where they were at in their journey, in their healthcare journey and practice.
Thanks for sharing that, Holly. I appreciate that. And Jody, I'll also share that, you asked the question, like this patient who comes in twice a year, like, how do you do that, right? There's lots of ways of educating your patients in a drip format. And one of the things we do talk about is this need to have frequent contact with your patients, whether it's through text message or social media or emails or whatever. You're regularly in front of them on a regular, like a lot, not just once in a while. Like your literally name is in their inbox on a weekly basis. Like it's always there. That's a key component of this stuff. So, or it's one of the key components. So let's continue on here. So where do you think people are dropping the ball? When we talk about dropping the ball, what we're talking about is where are you losing them? And we've identified these, what we call danger zones, these areas where it's very predictable that we lose patients. And what you see on the screen right now is a graphic that we created called the loyal patient journey. We've identified there's literally 11 key steps that occur throughout the course of caring for a patient from the time they call all the way to the time they're with you for a long period, they become an established patient. And it's very predictable where we can lose people. It's very predictable. And so we've identified, well, what are those causes? And then how do we neutralize them? And this whole thing about objective findings and giving feedback, it's one of the things that we do in the conversion and retention process to help eliminate some of these dangers. So that loyal patient journey is basically the way we have conversion and retention. There's a process of taking a patient from new patient through the day 1, day 2, and I'm sure Jody teaches a lot of this stuff as well, that you go through this whole process where eventually that person becomes a lifetime practice member. Now, what we've identified as what drives a journey to become where it becomes a loyal patient journey. And by the way, any of you want it, here's a way to get a copy of that loyal patient journey yourself for free, loyalpatientjourney.com. It's actually an interactive page where you can go on and learn all about the different steps and watch some videos and get educated and download a poster. There's nothing to buy. It's just simply an educational site you can go to learn more about this whole process of taking care of people, loyalpatientjourney.com. So what I want to do now is talk to you guys. I want to go through one more exercise. And this exercise is to help doctors understand, if we're going to use money as a metric to determine your success, I want you to know literally what you're leaving on the table right now, what your potential is. And here's what I want to also emphasize. What I'm not going to do is talk to you about, go to a bunch of new patients or go buy a new piece of equipment or all these things you need to do to generate revenue. I just want to show you with your existing practice right now, if you just improve your conversions and retention of your existing practice, what that could look like. You don't have to go to market for new patients. You don't have to buy a piece of equipment. You don't have to do anything other than improve your skill of converting and retaining. So let's go through some stuff, and I'm going to do this kind of quick, rather than for the sake of the program, being that we're virtual. Normally in a classroom we might go through this and spend 20-30 minutes going through the exercise, but I'm just going to go through it with you. Write down for you, and you could just use I'm going to give you examples of this on these slides here, and you can get an idea on your own when you go back and do this yourself. So new patients per month. I'm going to use an example that you're getting 20 new patients a month. Average new patient case fee. I'm going to use an example that you're collecting $22.50 on average per case. Maybe it's less for you, maybe it's more. Again, this is just an example to illustrate the point here. What about average collections per visit? Let's say you're collecting on average 55 a visit, and I want to do this for fun. How many years do you have left in practice? Are you going to be in practice 5 more years, 10 more years, 20 more years? How many more years are you going to be in practice? I'm going to use a number of 15. So there's your foundational numbers. It's different for every one of you. This is just an example to illustrate the point, though. Let's now move on to what I call your annual conversion potential. What does that mean? It's the potential additional revenue you can generate by simply converting more of your patients into care. Not getting more new patients, just of your existing patients. So of the 20 new patients, how many do not enroll in care right now? Well, I'm going to use an example that 7 don't. That means out of 20 new patients, only 13 enrolled and 7 didn't, just as an example. What's your ideal conversion rate? Meaning what percentage of new patients are actually saying yes to care? Ideally, we believe a 90% enrollment rate is an acceptable minimum for you to have. That means 9 out of 10 patients are saying yes to whatever you're recommending. If you're at 50% or 40%, I want you to see there's greater potential. And we have example after example of doctors doing that. Your potential conversions. Okay, that's going to simply be 7 in this case times the 90%. So we're going to say, we don't expect you to enroll 100% of your patients. So of the ones who are not enrolling, we're not going to say you're going to get 100% of them. We're getting some portion of them. So in this case, we're saying we're getting 6 out of the 7. Now let's do some math. To get your annual conversion potential, we simply take B, which is $22.50 in this case, times G, which was your 6 patients that you're now enrolling that weren't enrolled, times 12 months for the year, would indicate about $162,000 of additional revenue by just improving your enrollments. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. By just simply having more of your patients enroll in care, by getting better at conversions, by listening to Jody and teaching you how to do a better day 1, day 2, you will have better success of enrolling people, which translates to more money in your bank, which we're using as your metric to success. Next, let's talk about your annual revenue, your annual retention potential. This is simply saying, what if you see your patients longer? What if you have them stick around and follow through and not drop out prematurely? Okay, let's do some math. What's your current patient visit average? I'm going to use 20 as an example. I will tell you in America for chiropractic, it's 12. That's the average number of visits patients stay with a chiropractor in the US. Now, it may be different for you. Whatever your current PVA is, put that down. On average, how long does a patient stay with you? Now, what is the ideal PVA? Well, you're going to make up a number. What would you like that patient to stay? I think it's reasonable to double that number. That's why I'm going to use 40. We have plenty of examples of doctors doing 50, 60, 80, 100 PVAs. It just depends on you and your practice, as well as what you believe a patient needs to be under care. But whatever that number is, indicate that, because it's going to be something greater than probably your current PVA. Next, we're going to say is total conversions. That's going to be A, which is 20 from the previous numbers, times F, which was your conversion rate. That's going to be 18. So that was the 20 times the 90%. That's how I came to 18. So what we're saying here is now you have, out of your 20 new patients, you're going to actually have 18 of them enrolling in care. This is assuming now you had those people, that's the total number of people signing up for programs of care. We're going to now take that and we're going to do some math. And the way this works, I know this can be a little confusing. That's why I'm showing it to you on a screen here. You take 40 from your ideal PVA, minus 20 your current PVA, which is going to be 20, times your $55 from C, times 18, which is the number of people from K, times 12 months, works out to be a number. In this case, we're simply showing you $237,000 of additional revenue from your patients, all of your patients now, not just the new ones that you're enrolling, but all of the people you enroll, they're all staying longer. When you increase your retention, it impacts all of the people you're enrolling in care. So what I'm showing you here now is when you now take all of the new patients you enroll per month, you keep them longer over the course of the year, what that additional revenue could look like. Now, again, this is an example. It's different for every doctor depending on your fees and what the numbers are. But the exercise is to show you, if you go through this process, your potential of the revenue generate, the success that you experience as a result of you improving both your conversions and your retention. And in fact, if we add the two together, your 162 from the annual conversion and then your retention, there you go, about $400,000 of annual revenue increased as a result of improving both. Now, just for fun, as a fun exercise, I asked you before how many years you have left in practice. In this example, I said 15. That worked out to be almost $6 million of revenue over the course of 15 years by simply focusing on conversions and retention. I hope I've driven the point across how important it is, not just clinically, but to your financial success over the course of your career, of simply focusing on getting to be masters at this, like to put the energy into really learning how to enroll more people and more importantly, how to keep them. Now, I know the numbers are different for everybody, and the purpose of this exercise is simply to drive the point home to that the numbers. Listen, we're a software company, Cash Practice. We know numbers. That's our business. And I'm telling you right now, when you put the energy into this stuff, this is the result. This is the result.
And I want to add that the impact, can you go back to the last slide, please? The impact that this has on your personal life and your practice. If you can imagine, what would you do with an extra, in this example, $400,000 a year? Is it going to afford you that time that you've been wanting to spend with your family? You know, earlier, Dr. Bodson, you shared the story of how you came into practice one day and said, no more new patients for the next few months. We could do that because we were not dependent upon any more new patients showing up to the practice. We had consistent cash flow coming in throughout the month of our patients that we had retained. And we were really good at both conversion and retention, which makes us the experts. And I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but I want to brag about you a little bit because you shared the national average of patients staying with chiropractic is 12 visits. Dr. Bodson's PVA, patient visit average, was over 300. So that's 24 times the national average. That represents our patients stayed with us a lifetime. And it was a more joyful place to be in practice because we had these systems in place. We were humming along, we were taking care of people, being of service, but we're also being paid well for the work that we're doing. And it afforded you more time with your family when you didn't have to work so hard on the business at times.
Not to mention, it allowed me to pay our team well. It allowed us to take vacations and all those things. And I think all of you listening right now know what more money in your bank does. We all know that. So thanks for sharing that. You know, when we talk about conversions and retention, we know some of you get really good at conversions and you grow, or you improve your retention and you grow. But when you do both, you have exponential growth. You literally, not only are you enrolling more, but you're enrolling more and keeping them more. And you literally skyrocket your practice. In fact, we see a 5% increase in retention can grow profits by 75%. That's what we have a source there, right?
So for the people who are listening, again, practitioners from all over the world who do all different kinds of things, where do they start? Like what's a good starting place in your world? How do they take the tools that you offer and implement them?
That's what we're going to do right now. We're transitioning to, like, I know you're all going, all right, enough of this. Enough. I know we need this. Tell me what we need to do. Well, let me get to that. Let me get right to that. I'm just sharing with you here again, some additional stats showing the benefits of doing this thing. So how do we fix this? So you're asking the question, how do we do this? What do we do? Well, there's a lot to do. What drives conversions and retention? Okay, here they are. I'm going to give you the 4 things that drive it, and then we're going to focus on one specifically. Number 1 is patients need frequent contact. And I just shared that with you, Jody, that you need to be emailing your patients, texting them. You need to be on social media. You need to be in front of your patients all the time. And if you're not, that's a key area you need to work on. You need to work on being in front of your patients when they're not in your practice. That's number 1. Number 2 is feedback that's intuitive. And that's where we're going to focus the rest of our attention today, is on this feedback, the objective findings, giving your patients feedback in a format that they understand. You notice it's not just feedback, it's feedback that's intuitive. They get it. That's really critical. Number 3, patients need a frictionless payment experience. Jody, this is one of the reasons when you came to us initially, right? You want to have automated systems for collecting money and everything is automated. There's no manual process in the money processing. And number 4 is patients need their care forecasted. They need to know the future. They need to know how long they're committing to, how often they're coming in, what services what are their financial responsibilities. It's all forecasted out so they know what they're signing up for. Now, what we refer to these as the retention principles, and an easy way to remember them is the 4 Fs. The 4 Fs. These are the 4 things that we do through caring for a patient that ultimately will drive them to stay with us. That's the key thing. And the thing we're going to focus on today is number 2, feedback that's intuitive. So again, the 4 Fs: feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. And we're going to focus on those 4. Going back to our pyramid, here we go. There's those 4 things. The 4 Fs are what drive that journey. And that journey is what drives conversions and retention, which ultimately gives success. So I'm building the case here for you right now. I'm building the case to demonstrate these are the 4 things we do that will drive that whole process. So when you say, where do we start? We pick one of the 4 and we focus on it. And then we pick the next one and we focus on it. And then we pick the next one. And you focus on implementing each of these 4 Fs into your practice. And ultimately, that's what happens. And today we're going to focus, like I said, on feedback. That's the whole intention. And again, just to prove the point, this is from a practice from back to 2009 to 2022. I think it shows pretty evidently that they've grown their annual revenues by implementing these ideas. Now, I got to share with you, they're implementing all of these ideas. It's not just the feedback. They're doing all of this stuff. And when they do it, they're continuously adding patients to the practice and, more importantly, not losing them. Another practice going from 1.8 million to 4.6, and another one from 1.5 to 2.5 million. Like, they grow year after year. And what I'd like to say is that none of this stuff is a get rich quick thing. These are a get wealthy over time thing, that over time, as you're building the practice, that's what happens. So let's get right into this.
And those are all their cash collections. We don't have any access to their insurance revenue coming in. That's just cash.
Correct. So I think I've beat this point enough. Convert new patients, retain them. That is the key. So what are the driving forces? Those are the driving. So let's talk about improving conversions with feedback. Let's get into this. When it comes to the actual interaction and working with patients, in that journey, prior to that, the patient comes in for their initial evaluation, right? They come in and you do your workup, and you're going to now do a report of findings when they come back, a review. Part of preparing for that is to put together a report, a feedback mechanism that you're able to demonstrate to the patient that they need your care clinically. So in the conversion process, we'll generally go over our exam findings, our objective findings, ranges of motion, lab findings, posture, whatever tests you're doing in your particular practice, you're reporting to the patient on that. But the mistake we make is we use all of these tools that we understand, but I will argue that most of our patients don't intuitively get. Like, we have the benefit of learning Chinese and speaking a language that they don't speak, but somehow we're trying to interpret for them to understand it, but they don't understand Chinese. Like, we learn to be doctors and we learn doctor language, and somehow we expect our patients to just get it. And what we found was sometimes they do, but many times they don't. It's just so much easier to remove the confusion. I will say these are good tools, but they do leave patients somewhat confused. And what we found is, instead of doing that, we want to take all of that data and put it in a format that they just get. And what we found was a letter grade is very easy. Like, when I showed you the slide earlier with all the letter grades, I probably didn't have to explain anything, and you knew an F was bad and an A was good. You learned that going to school yourself. Like, you as a person, as a student, know what letter grades mean. And I'm going to tell you that doing that in your practice is a game changer. That when you're doing whatever you're doing objectively, whether you're a chiropractor or whether you're doing functional medicine or whatever you're doing, you're measuring things. All I'm simply saying is we want to put those findings through a filter or an analysis that creates a grade that converts it from Chinese to English or whatever language you're speaking, right? It converts it from a language they don't understand to a language they do understand. And what happens is this changes the conversation. I'll use the example with chiropractic. The patient came in with that neck pain or that back pain. It changes the conversation from, doctor, what do we have to do to get rid of my neck pain, to, doctor, what do we have to do to get my D to an A? It completely changes the conversation from symptoms to making progress towards wellness. it completely, it neutralizes that challenge we face of that difficulty of converting them from pain to wellness. I don't know if I've explained that clear enough or not, but it does change that conversation. It changes it away from pain to focusing on improving that grade. Now, when it comes to measuring things, you customize it. I'm showing an example here with some different parameters: anterior head syndrome, cervical curve angle. Clearly, these are things a chiropractor would measure. There may be things that you want to measure that are not in here, that I'm not showing here, but you can measure. There's like over 120 different things you could pick and choose in our software to measure. There's lab findings for those of you doing blood work. There's obviously chiropractic things you can do here with chiropractic. If you're doing any other type of care, we have lots of different things. Let me just say that. And if there's something you want to measure that's not in the system, it can certainly be added. The point being is, whatever you're measuring, there is some data, some measurement. And the question is that good? Is it not good? Is it okay? And the system will interpret it for you. It'll interpret it for you and create a rating and ultimately drive that rating. And we just use that rating to give it a letter grade. In fact, years ago, we didn't always use letter grades. We actually used a numerical score. We used to say, oh, you're a 65 or a 70 out of 100 or a 50. And what we found was some patients would say a 50 out of 100, that's not bad. It's half good. Like it wouldn't impact them too much. And as soon as we tied a letter grade to it, we saw that it had a greater impact of affecting patients' behavior. That if ultimately the aim here is to help them say yes to care, if the ultimate aim is to help them follow through with care, then if that's important to you, which I'm assuming it is, we found letter grades to be a very effective tool to translate your doctor language to patient language. It's a Google translator, if you want to think of it that way, as an analogy. So doctors could sit down, and here's a Dr. Todd Pickman. I'm not going to show the video, just like a little screenshot of it. In his video, he says patients just get it. Like when he's reviewing this with patients, they just get it. It's like it just makes sense to them. There's no real challenge with it. And again, showing doctors having conversions better. Plenty of testimonials. Here's Dr. Felicity going from a very low conversion rate to a higher conversion rate. Again, using these tools to help patients get the big idea, as well as to follow through with care. What I'd like to do for a moment is, I know you're probably itching to see this. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to turn over to Holly and let her share her screen. Holly's now going to show you when we log into Cash Practice, which is a software platform, just for a brief moment here. We're not going to take too long with this. Just briefly show you how easy this is to actually do. It is such a simple thing to do to convert your findings into a report card. So Holly, I'll let you take it over here.
Yeah, thank you. So normally what you would do to prepare before the patient comes in for the report of findings is you would run a wellness report. And I'll just show you, I already have this one done, but in here, whatever your findings are, you're just plugging in those numbers. We can see here what the target range is. So this would giving them an A, but we're entering in how they measured. And then we just simply hit save, and it's going to produce this customized report for them that you're going to print off. And it's multiple pages. It just shows them in different ways to demonstrate, because we all interpret and understand things differently. This is the most common thing, like, oh gosh, a D+, that sucks. What do I have to do to get better? So they're not, it changes the conversation away from pain, as Dr. Bodson said earlier. This second page goes over the different areas of health that we're focusing on to bring them into the practice. So whether you're doing functional medicine or physical therapy or chiropractic, it would be customized for each area depending upon the different parameters or biomarkers that you're measuring. And it grades each of those subjects like they got in school, and then it gives them their overall GPA. The third page, this page, I really like this one. This is fun to show with the patient on your computer, because you can show them like, look, here we're not focusing just on your general health. If we just focus on your general health, we can only get you so far. Here in our practice, we're able to focus on neurospinal health and functional fitness along with your general health, which is going to affect your overall grade. So it just makes a bigger impact for them, shows what optimal health is, the 3 T's, right? And then the last page is just some information from them that explains the importance of why you measured that thing, whatever that thing is that you're measuring. And then furthermore, I will show you when we are in this report, we have a lot of different things we could do. We can compare the report. We can email a HIPAA compliant version of this report to the patient. We could download this report and scan it into our EHR. We could download images and so much more. But you're basically able to create a variety of different sets that you want to measure. So maybe you have a certain set of things that you're measuring for a screening event that you're doing, a corporate screening event, and you just want to measure 5 things and show the patient there's a need for them to come in for a more comprehensive exam. And you have a different set for that. Maybe you're measuring 15, 20 things, but you can customize this to fit the needs of your practice and how you take your patients through their journey. Dr. Bodson, anything you want to add on this?
The only thing I'll add, great job with that. The only thing I'll add is that the intention of this, let me clarify, because a lot of doctors are looking at this. I know I can read some of your minds right now. The intention of this is not to be used as a diagnostic tool. It's not meant for you to, put in every single thing you measure and for you to use that as a determination of what you're going to do to treat the patient. That's not its intention. Its intention is for you to take a handful of things you measure that will change with the care you provide, add it to a report that you can then use as a tool to show the patient they're changing over time. It's a patient education tool. It's a tool for you to demonstrate the need for your care. And then it's also a tool for you to demonstrate how they improve over time. That's its primary purpose in time and for being developed is for that purpose. So that's really all we want to show. We'll keep it simple there. The software is pretty straightforward. It's easy. You enter data. It interprets the data, and then that data is then displayed in a nice reporting mechanism for you to be able to see. So
I wanted to share as well, we do also provide resources. So we have some marketing assets in here, which providers love because they're able to promote, like, what's your wellness score? Stop and find out, stop and ask. So it's a great way to not only bring new patients in, but keep them curious how they're progressing over time. And we have some social media assets that you could use as well. So we try to give you all of the tools that you need to be successfully implementing this.
We find that question of what's your wellness score it's a great thing for marketing as well as educational, because it causes people to go like, well, what is that? And it opens a conversation. And that's all you're trying to do with a question, right? Is open a conversation. So they go, maybe you have a poster in your office and the patient sees that and they go, Doc, what's this wellness score thing? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. Or maybe their patient's in there with a spouse or someone else and the spouse is like, what's this wellness score thing? Well, we'd like to do, would you like a preliminary wellness score done? We do it complimentary on you. And maybe you do a simple little 3 or 4 parameter wellness score as an introduction to your practice, as Holly just shared. And then you use that as a vehicle to say, well, based upon this, you're getting a D. I think we should go ahead and proceed with our more comprehensive wellness score that covers 15 different things. Like, you could use it as a marketing tool in that regard. So let me take back over, Holly, for this, and I'll wrap up with the last bit that we have. And
I just want to see if anybody from the community has questions for you guys, because
sure.
That was so much great information. And I know that everyone who's watching, your wheels are spinning. I can feel it.
I know it. Every time we talk about this, that's what happens. And,
so you guys just send me a message if you have questions. Go ahead, Miles. Sorry.
When it comes to the wellness score, it's not just for improving conversion. So I want to imagine that you were sitting down at a review of findings with a patient and you use that as a tool to show them kind of a summary of everything as to, listen, based on everything we see, we've determined your health as a D. That's how it's used in the conversion process. In the side of retention, when it comes to retention, we have those 4 F's, right? Frictionless payments, forecasting care, frequent contact, and feedback that's intuitive. The feedback that's intuitive is using the wellness score throughout the course of care to continuously report to the patient how they're improving. So again, using the feedback, imagine telling your patient when they first came in, they're an F, and now they're a C. And at that review of findings, a month in the care, 2 months in the care, you're showing them how they're progressing. You're just using it as a metric to show them how they're changing in a format that makes sense to them. That's all we're doing, is taking the data and putting it in a format that intuitively makes sense. And I'll tell you what happens when you use this and you give these to patients. When they take them home, they put them on the refrigerator. They show them to their friends. They use it as evidence to show their spouse that they made the right decision seeing you for care. Like, they use it to justify the fact that they're continuing with care And even though they're feeling better, they're sticking with it because there's still room to improve. That's ultimately what ends up happening with these kind of tools. So they go from an F to a D to a C to a B to an A over time as you're providing the services and the care that you are doing in your practice. That's the intention of it. Again, just some testimonials, doctors improving their PVA from 10 to 70 or 15 to 50 and doubling from 20 to 40, all using these tools. And, when we say, let's see how easy it is, I'll go back to Holly. Let me let you share your screen again, because I want you to show one more thing. And that is in the retention side of things, show them just briefly in the software, if we want to do a comparison report and just compare two things. So imagine this is a patient that you want to show them how when they first came in versus how they're doing now. And it's very simple. We choose a patient. We find that their wellness scores, and then you can actually probably just choose any. There we go. So Holly, let's say you choose that first one and then another one, and then you were to do the comparison report up top and view and print. So in essence, it's going to produce a report that shows how it changes over time. It went from an F to a C to an A. And again, if you wanted to print that report off and give it to the patient so they could see with their own eyes, basically the evidence that they're getting the benefits of care beyond just feeling better. Now, I'm assuming most of you on right now or listening to this are doctors who see patients beyond the symptomatic improvement, that once they're feeling better, there's still further work that needs to be done. And this is a very effective tool of neutralizing the danger of losing patients because, oh, I'm feeling better, I don't need care anymore. And that's what justifies the reason for stopping. This is a great tool for doing that.
It's also demonstrating you get results. So if they haven't referred a friend or family member in yet, I usually find doing the comparison report and showing them the good clinical news, they're like, heck yeah. And I want my husband to come in and get these same benefits. So,
or you ask them, like, if you're asking for referrals, it's a great way of saying, well, who else do you know who wants to improve their score? Like you use it as a tool to start that conversation. So let me wrap up here. We're getting to the end here. And as we go through this, let's kind of summarize. We started with success. We talked about conversion and retention as that success, that the loyal patient journey or these 11 steps are what you do to have that conversion retention. We identify there's 4 things you're doing throughout that journey. And the way we handle this is, how do you solve all this? How do you easily do it all? Well, I just showed you the wellness score. Holly just showed you the wellness score. That's how we do the feedback component. Now at Cash Practice, we have 4 components. We also have a care plan calculator, an auto debit system, and a drip ed system. These are 4 systems that do those 4 Fs. So we give you the tools. If you were to work with us, you have the tools to implement these 4 things. And when Jody asks, where do you start? Well, you pick one and you start with that, you get good at it, and then we keep implementing each of these. And over the course of time, you get better and better doing these things in the practice. And instead of you just going to a program and hearing how to do it and learning and writing some notes and then going back home and having to study it, well, when you use a software and you work with a company like ours, if you were to do so, we're teaching you what to do and you're actually implementing it. You're doing it and implementing. So feedback with the wellness score. And I would say, again, how much would you spend to earn 300,000 more per year? Like,
and how do people find you, Miles?
Yeah, how do they find us? So I'm going to share with you, when you do this, if you were to continue to invest in your practice and see that growth, here's where you go. If you want to find more about us and you want to book a demo and you want to learn more about it, go to cashpractice.com/staffless practice. That way we know where you came from. Go to cashpractice.com/staffless practice, and we will be happy to answer your questions, show you how it all works. And as you invest in your practice and as you continue to do more things, I promise you, you will see those results. I want to say thanks for having us. I know we went long. I know we covered a lot. I know we drove that point of retention and conversion, really hard, because what we found is it's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to know why to do it. And we want you to know that it's life-changing for both your patients and you as the doctors as well.
I love it. Miles, you want to hit stop recording, and if you guys have any